distinguished military career of 35 years in Special Forces. If you don't know Special Forces, you might have heard about Stanley McChrystal. He was a Special Forces guy. Tim was on the Navy side of it, but that's big time stuff that they do. And Tim has been there for a long time and done a lot of things. In addition to that, he's spent a lot of his civilian career in the environmental service, which is public service, at least in my view. And he has served as environmental commissioner of the state of Connecticut. He has served as environmental commissioner of the state of Rhode Island. And he's been with NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration organization on several capacities, and finally he's Secretary of Congress. So he has devoted really a significant part of his time, other than the time he was a SEAL, which is included in public service. So if you include all of that, it adds up to a lot of years. Tim is continuing his public service as a candidate for probate judge for this district. And, wherever you decide, it's certainly a tribute to him that he's not through with public service. He's going to give more, and he's given a lot already. I'd like to, with a great deal of pride, introduce my friend and former, has been in my unit several times, at least 2 times throughout my fairly lengthy Navy career, Tim Keeney. Thank you.
John, it's a real pleasure to be here this afternoon, and I'm very proud to be part of your luncheon. And as John said, this is really about sacrifice. I've got a few stories I'm going to tell you in a few minutes, but before we get to that, I just wanted to mention that service in the military is really, truly a great thing. And I was just talking to Kathy and Lou Johnson about this before the meal, and they agree with it. It's a fantastic thing that we offer our youth, because there's so much to gain from it. And if you're the kind of kid that takes advantage of opportunities that are out there, you will thrive in the military. Now I say that, and yet I have 2 sons. My oldest son would never go near the military. So there's some kids that definitely is not for. My second son, Tim Jr., like myself, was a Navy SEAL. He deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. He's loved his service, like me, a great experience. I can tell you, when I got off active duty after 3.5 years, I went to law school, and one of the first people I met was John Malone in law school. Of course, he was a couple of years ahead of me, so he knew what was going on. And he said, "Hey Tim, one thing you might consider is this Navy Reserve business." And of course, I never even thought about the reserves. He said, "Nah, you might want to think about it. It's not a bad thing. While you're in law school, you can go to reserve meetings. It's only 1 night a week, and not a bad program, and good guys in it." So he said, "Hey, come on over." And sure enough, his unit, he was the executive officer, the number 2 guy in his unit, as lieutenant commander. And they were drilling over at Brainerd Field. And I remember that Brainerd Field was where my dad served in the reserves when he came back from World War II. He was in the Army Air Corps. I said, "Hey, that might be interesting." So I went over there and met some really interesting people. And that's one of the great things about the military, is the kind of people that you meet, the diversity of the military. And I started drove this unit. Little did I know that for another 32 years, I would stay in the reserves. And I ended up, my last job in the reserve, as John mentioned, I served with them twice. I served with them in that unit and another unit when we were doing U.S. Forces Korea. Down in New Haven, Connecticut, we served together there and went to Korea together as well. So I had a terrific career. My last job in the reserves, I was in charge of the Navy SEAL Reserve program for the whole country, which was spectacular. It was a great job. They flew me out to Cornell, California, once a month for 4 days. Who wouldn't want to do that? But I got to tell you too about this luncheon today. This is really a great spot that Ted has chosen. And I kind of like Ted's approach to how he handles this. I understand last year he tortured you with cold food, lack of service. You weren't getting what you wanted. People were getting up and walking out. And this year they love the guy. He said, "Ted, whatever you say, we think you're the best. entire career in the Navy SEAL program, and it was the smartest decision I ever made. I learned so much about myself in the program and about other people under stress. Just a fantastic program. And I'd just like to share with you a couple of stories that I was able to hear and become part of in the last few years. And these are two Navy SEALs who got the Medal of Honor. And I'd just like to review with you what the situation was. The first one, his name is EOD Second Class Michael Mansour. Now this is a gentleman whose actually Medal of Honor ceremony I got to go to because my office in D.C. was on Pennsylvania Avenue, where I worked for 7 of the last 8 years. And it was just down the street from the Navy Memorial. So I actually went to this ceremony for this young sailor when he was given the Medal of Honor, and it was quite something. His parents were there, his brother was there, his sister was there. They had a reception afterwards at the Navy Memorial itself. It was really, really impressive. They also flew about 300 SEALs out for the ceremony. Also, I got to see a lot of my old buddies who were veteran SEALs in the audience. It was very special. But I want to tell you a little bit about Michael Mansour, because his story is really an important one, I think. And another thing I wanted to mention before I got to this was another SEAL friend of mine, Tommy Norris, was also a Medal of Honor winner, and he survived his incident. But you know, almost all these Medal of Honor winners who do survive, what they'll tell you is they didn't do anything that anyone else wouldn't have done. And what that shows you is it's the importance of training. Because if you're well trained, you're going to do what you're supposed to do, or you're going to know what you're supposed to do, and you're going to try to do it. And it just so happens that because of the situation in battle or wherever it was, these fellows performed extraordinarily well. But this fellow, Michael Mansour, he was in 2006, he was in Ramadi, Iraq. He and two other SEALs were on a rooftop. They were providing fire cover for some troops that were going to be traveling below them. And one of the enemy took a grenade, was walking underneath their roof. It was a flat roof. And just took the grenade, picked it up on the roof. The grenade bounced off his chest. Now, he was stationed on the roof right next to the exit. The other two SEALs were, the only way they could get out was through the exit where he was standing in front of. He could have jumped out of the way, he could have jumped right out the exit and would have been safe. But he knew that his two buddies were going to be left there. So what did he do? In an instant, he jumped on the grenade, killed him. His two buddies had shell fragments in them, but they survived. And I mean, here's a guy that was, what, 21 years old, 22 years old, and just, you know, exceptional fortitude, bravery, in that act. Another one I wanted to mention was another one I want to mention. His name is Lieutenant Michael Murphy from Patchogue, Rhode Island. And on June 28th, Michael Murphy was a lieutenant in the SEALs, and he was on a reconnaissance mission. He and 3 other SEALs were out in the Hindu Kush area of Afghanistan, and they were up in a mountainous region 10,000 feet up, and they were looking for this high-level bad guy who was known to be in a certain village area. So while they're up there, and again, I was going to say, Pastor George Highland mentioned this morning in the service, but it's called Rules of Engagement. The 4 SEALs ran into a herd of goats. They were being herded by a shepherd boy. The boy was probably about 10 or 11 years old. And so their position was compromised by this kid, and they weren't sure what to do. They actually left him alone. By leaving him alone, they actually ended up compromising their entire position. And within a matter of about 15 minutes, they had 50 bad guys surround them and unload them with automatic weapons. So they got into this